There once was this episode of The Simpsons that presented the audience with a chart of the food chain. I mean, this is the best kind of joke you get out of The Simpsons because there's really no punchline. It's just asserting to you, in a deadpan serious manner, this is the absurdity of how people think about the food chain. The food chain just becomes an excuse for whatever people want to believe, like that people should be able to eat ostriches and crocodiles, whatever. The misinformation that's circulating all around the mainstream media now about China's policy in Xinjiang, there's one man standing at the center of it all. Very much like this joke from The Simpsons. And yes, I realize it's a really bad idea to open my video with a cultural reference that's older than 80% of my audience. I'd probably be way better off opening this video with a joke about Bonnie Rebecca.
Chunky, flaky.
Chunky, flaky.
Chunky, flaky.
So the internment campaign of detaining large numbers of Uyghurs and other Turkic minorities into camps is really what distinguishes what's going on in Xinjiang from what China has done in other minority regions, including Tibet and other Tibetan regions. It also distinguishes it from the Cultural Revolution because it's the probably largest targeted internment of an ethno-religious minority since the Holocaust, basically.
This guy is a German. He's called Adrian Zenz. He's not an expert at all, neither of China or Islam or human rights, and he's an evangelist.
And it's now commonplace for Western politicians and major media outlets to liken China to Nazi Germany and suggest that China's conducting a Holocaust against Uyghur Muslims. These are incredibly damning accusations, and we at the Gray Zone feel that it's important to examine the basis of these claims before running with them.
The article claims to be based on government statistics and documents and interviews with 30 witnesses, yet it soon becomes clear that the article is mostly based on a report authored by Adrian Zenz, a German researcher who popularized the idea that 1 million people were locked up in Xinjiang based on accounts of only 8 people. His latest report on birth rate in Xinjiang was funded by the Jamestown Foundation, a conservative think tank based in Washington, D.C.
So the internment campaign has established an estimated 1,000 to 1,200 internment camps all over the area. They are of different types, and we have witness accounts.
So the Network of Chinese Human Rights Defenders is a Washington, D.C. based NGO with a strong pro-United States and strong anti-China bias. They also have likened China to Nazi Germany in the past. It was a report by the Network of Chinese Human Rights Defenders that first popularized the millions detained figure with respect to Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang in a 2018 report to the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. This has often been misrepresented in the West as a UN-authored report because it was cited by a U.S. member of that panel. It was not authored by the UN or a UN body. In this report, the Network of Chinese Human Rights Defenders estimates that 1 to 3 million Uyghur Muslims are in re-education detention camps or re-education day programs. And according to the CHRD, this is based on interviews and limited data. When one looks at the actual study behind their claims that they published, it's in fact based on interviews with 8 anonymous Uyghur individuals living in villages in Xinjiang.
One only needs to take a quick read of his 20-odd page report in order to find, well, more questions than answers. For instance, he claims that most recently Uyghur regions appear to conceal birth rate data, indicating its increasing sensitivity. Now, for the first time in about 2 decades, Kashgar Prefecture's 2019 annual report does not divulge birth, death, or natural population growth rates. The reason for this is, according to Zenz, apparent. Kashgar's population declined between 2018 and 2019. This could be due to out-migration. It might also be caused by extremely low birth rates. Can you believe your ears? This is apparent. Such sentences should never have been the language of a researcher. Simply because such details are missing in one annual report, could any serious scholar reach the conclusion that this must have been the result of a forced birth control campaign? Zenz was right about the population of Kashgar Prefecture declining from 2018 to 2019 from 4.63 million to 4.62 million. The difference was around 10,000 people, less than 0.2%. And according to my sources, the number of Han people in Kashgar actually dropped more than Uyghur people. So on what basis could he extrapolate that there was extremely low birth rates among Uyghur women only? Zenz himself couldn't exclude out-migration as a factor either. So the reason is apparent, except that he is only speculating.
I would classify them as either psychological torture or physical torture. The first are camps where people describe of being interned and being forced to undergo re-education sessions, which is hour-long sessions of memorizing, reciting, and learning about communist propaganda, which oftentimes they don't intellectually grasp at all, but they're having to repeat it, of Chinese language. And what they also very much get told is that the law is above religion, in the sense of they are forced to give up their religion. They're forced to renounce religious belief.
He's a member of an American organization which is called Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, which is far-right organization in the US with people coming from the CIA. This is a joke. I mean, this is really a joke, because this guy, you just have to look behind. Yeah. So I think this is very important, because the whole business, the whole thing today is coming from one guy, who's supported by organization in the United States and far-right organization.
He writes, by 2019, Xinjiang planned for over 80% of women of childbearing age in the rural southern four minority prefectures to be subjected to birth control measures with long-term effectiveness. He provided a source link, which is the Xinjiang Health Commission's budget report issued on January 29, 2019. But this sentence or such information is nowhere to be found in this budget report.
So while we had a lot of people in camps being built and camps growing, that's an easy thing to be outraged about. That's an easy thing to actually bring to United Nations and other places, in people locked up in internment camps. China, now we are late in the game, and China is moving away from that. China is now releasing people by determination. Many people are being released, and the Karakash list leaked document also proves a large share of release of people into what? Into the unfreedom of a sophisticated police state.
If you want to know what kind of guy Adrian Zenz is, I'd encourage you, just this once, to try judging a book by its cover. You know what? Just try judging this particular book and its author by its title. Yeah, go ahead, take a moment, read the title in full. That tells you a lot about what kind of a crackpot Adrian Zenz is. I am not suggesting to you that he works for or with the CIA, because I'd like to imagine that the CIA works with a higher caliber of individual. Oh, and if you object that you would never judge a book by its cover, well, you can find the whole book online. You could read it yourself. But tell me something. Do you actually take a copy of Maxim magazine off the shelf and read page after page with a completely open mind, as if there's just no way you can prejudge what the contents of this magazine are going to be by its cover, by its title, by the summary of information that's provided to you there, yeah, you know what? Spare yourself. In this case, judge a book by its cover and judge the author by the book. The Jamestown Foundation, the foundation that published his work, yeah, the Jamestown Foundation is a joke that doesn't even endure the scrutiny of a quick Google search, a Google search I would encourage you all to do. I'd just like to close this video with a lament for the good old days of really highly professional CIA, black ops, and disinformation campaigns. There really were disinformation campaigns involving Vietnam, Cambodia, Sudan, and Haiti that I have researched, and I can say honestly, still to this day, people find them convincing. Still to this day, like I talk to other specialists in the field, and it's like, bro, you don't know that's CIA disinformation? Like, it still hasn't been debunked in the eyes of people with PhDs who consider themselves specialists in Cambodia or whatever. But what, a lot of people with PhDs are chumps. Adrian Zenz himself is an example of that. And yeah, you know what? That brings me back to like the other funny recurring leitmotif. I mean, what is it that makes Adrian Zenz supposedly respectable? It's that he has a PhD from Cambridge University, England, in social anthropology. Yeah, you know what? I used to be married to a woman with a PhD specifically from Cambridge University, England, specifically in social anthropology. I spent a whole lot of time hanging out with, hobnobbing with, meeting face-to-face the professors and students in social anthropology at Cambridge, England. I am unusually well qualified to tell you just how little it means that this particular crackpot got a PhD from Cambridge. And, you know, I do notice that a great many of these people who are put on stage and presented as experts don't actually speak, read, or write Chinese. I mean, look, I never thought I'd be wistful for the bad old days. You know, normally when the disinformation is of a low enough quality, what it really indicates is not that the intelligence professionals lack professionalism, but that they're dragging their feet. Like, they don't really want the lie to be convincing or believable. If you look at the cover-up of the assassination of RFK, not JFK, RFK, two different guys, there are so many obvious holes in the story that you really have to wonder, is it that the people participating in this assassination, you know, were inept? Or is it that they really wanted it to be discovered? For people who really are career intelligence professionals, that's the main way they can express their dissatisfaction with the leadership of someone like George W. Bush or the leadership of someone like Donald Trump. They can't really object, they can't really protest, but yeah, they can drag their heels and do a really transparently shitty job.